This nibble originally aired on RSBANDB Update, episode 784, Crouching Ninja Hidden PAG. Enjoy. In the future, Jagex is already thinking about what the next PAG could be. It could be RuneScape related, it could be old school related, or it could be about one of their unannounced games. It could be, should there be a PAG for this feature? And over time, they hope more and more of the devs will become comfortable with it, and as this grows, there will be more and more involvement.
I mean, it might take some time to get comfortable with what was that saying, with PAGs?
Yeah.
You can't just jump right into PAGs. You gotta...
Yeah, the dev teams have to become comfortable with them.
Yeah, they do.
And, that makes sense because in the way that it's structured in most game studios, you have content designers and then you have programmers, and the content designers design the content and the programmers implement it. And you often have cases sometimes where the programmers are not content designers. And what that does is it puts you into a situation where you can have developers that are extremely passionate about something because they're also designers, and then that's the point where you would get friction between them and the player advocacy group. So that's what it means by becoming comfortable. So there's a lot of
friction then when you're between the PAGs. You're saying there's friction?
Friction potentially between the PAG and the dev team. Friction between the PAG and the dev team, yeah.
I see. So they might not bend over backwards to get another PAG going.
Exactly. Because there's lots of software developers out there and content designers who feel their design is king and they don't want to effectively have outside influence because you're dealing with people, remember from our game design session, who have been doing game design as their passion for years and don't necessarily want to be told how to do something.
I see.
And for all intents and purposes, and just to give as much credit as we can to the actual game designers out there, that's entirely true. Because you don't want to have somebody come in and say, hey, you're going to be implementing this new boss, but you're Jagex's best PVM JMod, and you're going to, have the PVM PAG tell you what some of the things should be that you're going to do with it, right? You might want to design that on your own. And perhaps PVM is a bad choice, but...
that could turn into a verb, oh man, it just got pegged, huh?
And let me actually give you a really good example on this. Do you guys remember the so-called hit game 2048, the mobile game?
I never played it.
I remember that game, actually.
Yeah. So 2048 is a game, and what many people do not know is that 2048 is a copy of the game principles of another game called Threes. And what happened with this is that the company behind Threes, who was some game designers and UI designers, spent a lot of time designing their game and researching it and whatnot, and actually putting money into the R&D side of it. And then they come out with this game that, is a beautiful game. It's got good sound design. It's got fun little graphics and whatnot. And it was a very unique concept. The idea being you combine base numbers, 1s and 2s, to make 3s. And then you combine those 3s to make 6s, and then 12s and 24s, and so on and so forth. And this was the initial design of this game. But then lo and behold, you have this web game come out, copy the concept of 3s, call it 2048. And for some reason, that one becomes a hit, whereas Threes in itself is here sitting in the iOS App Store on its own and just had its own concept ripped off by someone who just copied it. And that's the difference between what is game design and just being a software developer in some cases, if you're talking about games. So effectively, you can have a good design for something, whether it be a standalone thing like Threes, or maybe a new concept for the farming skill, or a new boss mechanic, and you can have that design as a content designer inside Jagex. But on the other hand, imagine one of these developers just had their idea lifted, content designers just had one of their ideas lifted from them, and implemented by someone else? How would that make that designer feel? And that's why
Probably
the question
like it got pegged, right?
exactly, and that is why content designers are going to have to ask for this PAG influence, and it's going to have a clear goal in it, because then you can wind up with this kind of situation. You can watch full episodes of RSBANDB Update right here on this YouTube channel. You can also listen to audio versions of RSBANDB Update at update.rsbnb.com, and feel free to subscribe to our show and any number of podcast listeners out there at update.rsbnb.com/subscribe.